Here comes tomorrow, shining with promise, bright, brave new worlds for you to explore. If you don't like it, just hang around, cause tomorrow's tomorrow will reset the store. You can fight to turn the tide, try to rewrite, or just take flight, but you can't change the simple fact that it's where all your hopes are hiding. Here comes tomorrow.
Hello, homos, sapiens, and superior alike. My name is Josephine Riesman.
And I'm Becca Petunia.
We are two trans women here to talk about non-binary writer Grant Morrison's Turn of the Millennium comics run with the X-Men and what it tells us about finding joy in a world that hates and fears us. In other words,
Here
comes tomorrow.
That was the worst one we've ever done, Josie.
I thought it was going to be the best one because I was following your lips. I was like,
I was following your lips.
Oh, son of a bee.
And
Okay.
Here we are in the tomorrow I was dreaming of in our Dust episode yesterday.
That's right.
When I said tomorrow is going to be a better day, tomorrow is today.
Well, I still think it will. It still will be. Today we are talking about a very well-known and perhaps the best-known arc of this run. And we have a special guest for it. But first, Becca, can you give us a little rundown of what happens and what we're talking about?
Well, it's another open school night hullabaloo at Xavier's as we engage with Riot at Xavier's, which is, of course, New X-Men 134 through 138. I guess technically Riot at Xavier's is just 135 through 137, but all 5 issues absolutely go together.
Yeah.
This is, of course, written by Grant Morrison, art by Kieran Grant, and, of course, Frank Quitely, with inks by Norm Rapmund, Tim Townsend, and Avalon Studios. And in this arc, we get to spend some time with the students at Xavier's school. Specifically, a brand new character named Quentin Quire, who's a kind of nebbishy super genius nerd who has big ideas about what the world should look like. When Quentin learns that he's adopted, he decides that he's sick of the world as it currently is, and it's time to make some changes around here. So he redoes his look to be inspired by humans' first depiction of mutants doing terrorism, first seen in Uncanny X-Men number 14. And Quentin, along with his new Omega gang, aka the New X-Men, start a plan to convince Charles Xavier that his dreams are wrong, and start getting revenge on humankind for the actions in Genosha way back in the first issue of this run. While this is happening, Zorn is taking his special class on a little camping trip. And on this camping trip, U-Men attack, and Zorn's kids, Beak, Angel, Ernst, Martha, Basilisk, they all kind of wind up learning a lesson about how to be better people in a way that maybe Zorn knew that the U-Men were going to attack all along? ... Quentin takes over the Xavier Academy on open school night. There is this giant riot at Xavier's, and ultimately, in the process of stopping Quentin, Sophie Cuckoo is killed in the process, Sophie being Quentin's crush, and Quentin himself ceases to have a physical form. Also, Emma has to deal with what happens after one of her prize students dies. And then Jean Grey learns that Emma and Scott have been cheating on her. I don't know. Is that's a good enough summary for us to get started, at least?
Yeah, and the mutant drug kick is involved.
True.
Yes.
This also introduces the mutant drug kick. This also introduces Jumbo Carnation, whose death also instigates Quentin's rage. And of course, Jumbo Carnation, a character I think never should have been brought back to life. But that's another bigger story.
Separate question. Today, as we discuss this riotous act at Xavier's, we are so lucky to have one of the best experts on the X-Men out there. We have a special guest, Jay Edidin, co-host of Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men. If you are a listener of this podcast, you are statistically very likely also a listener of his podcast. And we are so excited to have him. Jay, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here. This is such an amazing confluence of favorite people and favorite subjects.
Oh, that's how we feel too. You were our first pick for this one, and we were so glad that we got you.
Thank you so much. I'm also really excited about talking about this arc in a group that is majority Quentin Quire apologists, because that is a rare situation to be in.
So, for folks at home, Jay and I have known each other through the X-Men comics sphere for a while. You know, I had a beard when I started talking to Jay, and Jay didn't have a beard, and now Jay has a beard and I don't.
And both of us at points along this journey have cosplayed Quentin Quire.
Right, and that's what I was about to say is, Jay, when we first met in person was 2019 at FlameCon, and I was dressed up when we met in person. I was dressed up as specifically the then X-Force, I think was the current run that Quentin was in. But I was dressed as X-Force Quentin Quire, and it was lovely because you know what? I love Quentin Quire. I think Quentin Quire is one of the best X-Men characters. He is definitely a top 5 for me.
Wow.
And that does not mean that I think Quentin Quire is right.
No. That's an important distinction, but he's certainly a fascinating one.
That does mean that I think Quentin Quire is interesting and one of the most interesting characters. And Jay, I'm so glad to be on this podcast with a majority Quentin apologists. I'm so glad to be on this podcast with a majority queer people, and I'm so glad to be on this podcast with a majority of people who have objectively right opinions about what matters in superhero comics.
Is this a majority or a totality?
As proven.
It's a totality. The other things are totality. Yes.
It's unanimous then.
The other things are unanimous.
Jay, I'm curious. This is a question we ask everybody. When did you first read this Morrison run, and what did you make of it?
So I
first read it
as it was coming out in trades.
Oh, I got so excited because
Okay.
we have been waiting for someone other than Josie who was reading these issues as they came out in. So when you said
In
as
floppies.
they came out, I did victory hands, and then
I read some of it in floppy. I read some of Morrison's run in floppies, but this arc, by the time I got to it, was in trade.
Sure.
Because it was this stuff. Morrison's run was coming out as I was starting college, and it was a heady time, as they say.
You don't say.
Always is.
Just a touch.
Did you like what you were reading when you read the Morrison run the first time?
I loved it. It was the first X-Men that I was reading that was even remotely contemporary.
Right.
It was sort of where I went after the Age of Apocalypse and God Loves Man Kills.
Right.
And
Oh God, it is great to follow up God Loves Man Kills with this, because I feel like you were just saying, it's one of the first X-Men runs that's like vaguely contemporary, but like you were reading because you were reading it in the, early 2000s or whatever. But like, it's also one of the only X-Men runs that I feel like is vaguely contemporary in the sense that it actually feels like it's commenting on the news that is currently happening. And I feel like God Loves Man Kills has a lot of that vibe too.
Yeah, it's really it strikes me over and over again how incredibly prescient Morrison's run was. Like it's a little bit, if you'll pardon, uncanny.
Yeah, we were just talking about, this isn't this arc, but like, the in Germ Free Generation on our Discord, we were talking about the page with the school shooter, which obviously is referencing Columbine, but the specific stuff that he's saying was not the kind of stuff the Columbine kids said. It's the kind of stuff that kids say now. And I think Morrison was both responding to what was going on at the time, but yes, tossing in some ideas about the future that proved to be troublingly accurate. So let's talk about Riot Xavier's. I think we should probably just start with the character of Quentin Quire. How do people feel about Quentin in this run versus the way he's been depicted subsequently? Because I feel like here, Morrison has a very clear intent, which is this kid's like a fascist. You can read interviews and like Morrison's like, this kid sort of represents the inevitable but probably wrong answer to the question. But subsequently, we've gotten a lot more positive depictions of Quentin, and I'm curious what you both make of that divergence.
I mean, I think Quentin is to a large extent the radicalized kid who comes out the other end a nihilist. Like,
Which
Say
is
more.
which is what we see, because I feel like Wolverine and the X-Men Kid Omega is, which is like his next big appearance, I feel like, after this. Wolverine and the X-Men Kid Omega is a lot more nihilistic than New X-Men Kid Omega.
yeah, he is not this Kid Omega. Well, this Kid Omega is performatively fascist, if that makes sense. Like, you can't when you're talking about authority figures, you can't distinguish, like, it's not, I don't think it's appropriate to distinguish between performative and actual fascism because they work out the same way. But for a teenager, I think there is a really critical difference.
Interesting.
One of the things that struck me going back to this arc is how much everything Quentin does is about appearances and is about playing a specific role and performing gang, performing mutant, performing all of these things, performing counterculture, performing rebellion.
Performing male romantic partner while he's trying to seduce
all
someone.
of these are things that he's putting together from the outside in.
But because his entire, like, it's absolutely a performance, because he's got a twofold, thing where it's like, I'm doing this to show Charles Xavier something, and I'm doing this to show Sophie Cuckoo something. Like, of course it's performance because he wants it to be seen. It's all about being seen by those two people in particular.
But it's also performance in that it's not internally motivated. Like, it's not, when he actually talks about it, when he's actually discussing it, he's not there. He brings up values, but he's very clearly sort of pasting them on to the model that he's adopted.
Right. It's much more of a libidinal thing for him than it is like, I've thought through the Communist Manifesto and here's the program.
The thing that really strikes me about Quentin, and really in general about the kids in this arc, but more Quentin than anyone else, is how incredibly age accurately he's written too. Like, I don't know if anyone else was an asshole in high school. That's not exactly like, or was specifically like an asshole or a rebellious asshole, someone who really wanted to rebel and wasn't quite sure how, but had like these models you could work from.
Sure.
But that was intensely relatable for me.
Yeah.
And Quentin is kind of doing a speed run of this because as he's doing it, his secondary mutation is manifesting. And his brain is just sort of in an exaggerated version of already exaggerated adolescent brain development.
Right.
So he's kind of speed running adolescence here, which I think is another important thing to acknowledge in terms of what an absolute shitheel he is. Like,
it's true.
I also do think, even if perhaps by accident, I think Quentin's anger at Charles Xavier, I feel like, is so justified.
Yes.
And I mean, like, right now, I talked a little bit about it in our first two episodes, but like, I do a lot of like local community activism type things. And again, I can't go into a ton of specifics because I can't speak for these organizations on an X-Men podcast. But I know exactly I can't say I know exactly how Quentin feels because I'm not posturing as a fascist and I'm not, killing people.
We appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
I'm not killing people to impress a girl. Usually I just, impress girls by being kind.
And knowing a lot about comic books.
Yeah, that helps too. What happens is I walk up to girls and I go, "Oh God, you know what's so funny? My usual joke that I would tell is I used to say, walk up to girls and say, 'Did you know that the Silver Surfer Norin Rad's girlfriend is named Shala Bal?' But that's not obscure trivia anymore because Shala Bal is the Silver Surfer in the movie. God, I need to rework my entire game. Anyway,
there was a time.
Highly recommend explaining Strife.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'd love to explain Strife. That's the best shibboleth. The
new thing for me needs to be Lady Phantom X. I set it up on this show.
Oh, you're right.
It needs to be Lady Phantom X. There's 3 Phantom X's, possibly 4. Anyway, and then there's also X. But what we need to discuss is I totally get some of the things that Quentin is saying. Because Quentin is like, I wrote down a bunch of these things that he says, right? Like, he goes, "You were never my age, Professor. 16 million mutants died in Genosha while you were imagining new ways to do nothing." Or, "So much for the dream. All my life I've waited for this dream to come true. We were promised peace and security. All my life, where is it?" And the thing about this is like, this is exactly how it feels to be trans and politically involved in America, especially in 2025. Because
Yes.
I
Yes.
I want to
Yes.
see some things happening. I want to see things happening. And you know what? Fine. Cancel me. Cancel me. Every
Uh-oh.
single person on Blue Sky saying, like, okay, but what if we just voted for someone who also hates trans people,
Right.
but is marginally nicer than Donald Trump? That's not I
Right.
I'm waiting. I don't want to sit around and do nothing. I don't want to sit around and do
Yeah.
nothing. I was told I was told the dream. I was told the dream that,
Right.
I would grow up to be happy and successful and safe and all of these things. I was told that I could be whoever I wanted to be, and I wanted to be a hot girl, and I did get to
Hmm.
be a hot girl, but now I'm being told that I just have to keep waiting as well, and it's ridiculous. And I know exactly
Not
how,
just keep waiting, but move
but
backwards.
move
That's the thing.
Yeah.
backwards. And that
Yeah.
is, again, Quentin says at one point too, like, or not Quentin, Tattoo says it. Humans killed Jumbo Carnation, Xavier, and where were you? Watching the opera? And that's absolutely how, like, obviously
Right.
they're being silly
Hmm.
because Charles could not have stopped the death of Jumbo Carnation, and we later learn humans didn't even kill Jumbo Carnation.
Right.
But that is exactly how I feel with so many of like our Democrat politicians, where it's like you should be doing something right now, and instead you're going on vacation, and instead you're playing softball with the Republicans at the annual Congress softball game. You're
Right.
doing all of these things, and like I just
But this is what happens when liberalism isn't actually acted upon or believed in. Is people come to believe that there's no such thing as liberalism, that it's just another word for nothing. And this is what I find so interesting about this comic is you're coming at it, if you're an X-Men fan, having believed in Charles Xavier's dream to one extent or another for a while, and the trouble is you're struggling not only with politics but with superhero comics, with the fact that like the
Yeah.
X-Men can never really reach a resolution, and those two things are kind of interrelated phenomena because for something like our present day two-party system, you can never really have a final resolution of the dialectic because the players are in the same game. And anyway, I just it's I agree. You start to feel like Quentin Quire, and that's one of the reasons why this comic resonates so much is because as readers we felt like Quentin Quire. As readers we were like, well, you promised us new X-Men. Where the hell are the new ideas? Like, give us some new ideas. We want a way
Yeah.
forward. And the trouble is, the end of this story is basically like, unfortunately, you have to think really hard to come up with new ideas. New ideas don't just come out of rage.
Right, and that's Quentin's whole problem. Quentin is right that Xavier isn't doing enough, but Quentin also isn't doing enough because Quentin doesn't have fully formed ideas.
Right.
Fascinatingly, this all could as easily be describing the Mutant Revolution era.
Interesting. Go on.
What is the mutant revolution era
Yeah.
referring
For
to?
our
This
listeners.
is so
Yes.
Oh,
this is in Brian
for our listeners, and
this is in
not.
Brian Bendis's run.
Oh,
Yeah.
Schism, my favorite run.
Well, post Schism, but
Keep going.
and this is when Cyclops is running what is claiming to be a mutant revolution and is kind of an underground version of the Xavier School,
Right.
and which never quite actually coalesces into a revolution.
No.
And it's to an extent contrasting Quentin Quire's arc to this point and Cyclops' arc to that point is an exercise in accelerated versus like massively stalled adolescence. Because Cyclops is the kid who didn't have any kind of adolescent rebellion. Like who
No.
was was the kid who was so completely duty driven at that point that and again I feel like when we're talking about metaphors that like that period of Cyclops' life is a great metaphor for the experience of coming out as trans in your 30s.
Which I
That
did.
it's likewise.
Yeah.
I missed it by 1 year.
Close
Ah,
enough. Your
yeah.
30s technically last till you're like, I don't know, I was gonna say 42, but I'm 42 now and I'm definitely in my 40s.
Jay, you really think I came out when I was in my 40s? I'm flattered that you think I'm in my mid 40s.
I don't know. I just know I all I know is that you're a high school teacher and I have trouble conceptualizing high school teachers in their 20s.
Yes, you don't want to believe
But
it.
no.
I came out as 29, Jay.
See, that definitely counts as 30s.
Okay. Anyway,
Yeah.
continue.
That's 30s or 28 and on.
I get your idea of like there's the very unless I'm misunderstanding, you're talking about in your 30s, all of a sudden you have this accelerated adolescence that you weren't expecting.
Yeah, and well, and accelerated and in some ways much freer and much more fundamentally revolutionary.
Yeah. Yes, it is because it's something. Yeah,
Where
good.
the stuff that you've been, tamping down or avoiding since the first time is suddenly in the forefront and suddenly you have something useful to do with it.
Just building off of this with regards to Cyclops, like what does Cyclops say during Emma's seduction scene here, where Emma's like, "Don't you just want to stop being a superhero?" And he's like, "But I've never been anything else. I've never been
Yeah.
allowed to be anything else," which is absolutely how a lot of this feels in your
A lot of
30s.
this feels.
Hmm.
Yeah, and one thing that's interesting is when Quentin decides to sort of trans in some way himself, what does he do? He decides to dress up like he changes his clothing. Like you say, Jay, it's about appearances. And it's specifically
Hmm.
saying, okay, the world thinks that I would look weird if I dressed like this, that I'd look threatening if I dressed like this. Maybe that's what I should do. And as a trans woman with lots of chest hair who likes to wear low cut dresses, I know that feeling. Like I look like the nightmare that a lot of transphobes have. And I love it. Like that's something I can really relate to. Is like the desire to go, okay, you're afraid of an AMAB body with hair and a dress. Well, get ready for me because I'm going to be really nice to you and you're going to get confused. You know? That's sort of I get where Quentin is having a profoundly trans relatable experience in a lot of ways. I think what we're all agreeing on here.
So my favorite thing about Quentin's makeover is
Tell
that he
me.
finds a way to keep wearing sweater vests.
Yes! No, that's so true. That's so true. God,
Like he will compromise and remake every single other aspect of his visual appearance and his presentation and his politics, but god damn it, you can have those sweater vests when he discorporates.
which he does.
Yeah.
But like, because at his core, Quentin is still a loser, which is exactly what
Yes.
Right.
what Sophie says. Sophie and the other cuckoos, they say it together. But like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's
Yeah.
again, like, because he hasn't fundamentally changed who he is, and who he is a prized student. And that's signified,
Yeah.
so often signified in visual signifiers, and Becca Petunia's 20s, that's so often signified by wearing sweater vests. That's how you know someone
Ah,
is a prized student. Or
that's right.
that is absolutely all I wore when I was a man. But
It's
I
It's awfully risque.
it's
I also wore
all
pants. I also wore pants. And you know what? I had a shirt under the sweater vest. But the point is like, Quentin, when you're a prize student, all you want is the professor to say, "Yes, you're right. Yes, you're smart." That's what you want
yeah.
as a prize student. And that's all Quentin wants as a rebel as well. Quentin doesn't actually change, which I love, that the fact that he's basically just wearing a palette swap of his old outfit kind of signifies, because he wants the same thing. When he
Yeah.
builds, the anti-grav devices for Martha, he's doing that because he wants people to like him, people to think that he's good at things. He wants Charles Xavier to be proud of him. And he wants Charles Xavier to be proud of him as a fascist, too. Like, or whatever we're calling him.
Well, but much like Magneto later in the run, spoiler, all he wants is for Charles, for the ultimate liberal, to admit that he was wrong and that whoever the speaker is, Quentin or Magneto, was right. Like the most important thing is getting the lib to concede,
But
or
it's
maybe I'm
also,
misreading you.
again, part of it is performing the appropriate thing. So when I was a very, very little kid, and this is one of those I can't believe no one figured out I was autistic stories. This is the one that doesn't involve fan letters to a logician. But I knew that like kids were supposed to draw on walls and floors. And this would have been when I was like somewhere between like 3 and 6. And I knew that this was a thing that kids did, but I didn't really see the point of it, and it wasn't really something I wanted to do, but it was something I felt I vaguely that I ought to do. So I took a brown crayon and I colored cracks in a hardwood floor, or part of the cracks in a hardwood floor. And this feels like what Quentin is doing here. There's a great panel, I don't remember which issue it's from, but I screen capped it, where he says, "We're not international criminals. We're not famous super terrorists. It's true we want to tear down everything you've created and replace it, but it's not because we're monsters. It's because we're young and it's our right." And that is one of the most telling lines in the arc for me. And it's one of the places where I most directly pull what I was saying about performance.
Say more. What's so telling about it?
Well, because he's he's again going through the motions of rebellion because it feels like the appropriate thing to do under the circumstances.
The rebellion itself is following the rules.
Yeah, and he never manages to break from that. And that's, I think, also critical to the difference between old Quentin and new Quentin. Like the Quentin in this arc and the Quentin that we get in Wolverine and the X-Men is that Quentin is coming back from what is an international terrorist act, but a kind of brilliant one. He gets relegated to Wolverine school after showing up at the UN and forcing all of the delegates telepathically to say what they truly think.
Right.
Which creates a large number of international incidents and is generally considered pointless, but feels a lot more sensible than any of this nonsense. And is one of those things that I feel like a lot of us who are in activist communities kind of fantasize about. But that Quentin is a Quentin who is much less concerned with what people think. Like who is again in the I did the going through the motions rebellion. I'm just gonna kind of be nihilist and do my own thing, and I really like suit jackets and shorts.
Yes.
And that's the Quentin. The Quentin wearing the Magneto is right shirt and the suit jacket and shorts in here is the point at which Quentin feels like he might be a reasonable preview of the Quentin we see. That's sort of because the fascist Quentin doesn't last, but the provocateur Quentin does.
Yes.
I mean, and you need a provocateur. That's why he's one of the most lasting and interesting characters. Because he's this pebble in your shoe the whole time, whenever he pops up.
Was it Bachalo who did the cover where he's sitting on the floor of the bathroom wearing a t-shirt that says, "Remember when Wolverine was cool? I don't."
Yes.
Me neither, and he's just spray painted it on the wall.
Okay, that's it. But
yes, that's Bachalo.
Yeah, I thought so. That, I mean, like, if you can see that cover as an X-Men fan and not love that character, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. But it is a very different version, but I think it makes sense because I think it's a good way. Fascist Quentin can't last.
No,
and I think provocateur Quentin is a good compromise because it also is similarly performative. And I think that is what is crucial. Is that no matter what, Quentin is performative. And no matter what, Quentin is going through the motions of what a rebellion would look like, while also still desperately... I mean, like, look, at the end of the day, he also still wants to please Wolverine in that entire arc. And Wolverine becomes like his... Like, Wolverine adopts, instead of a young lesbian in that one, Wolverine
Yeah.
adopts a Quentin Quire. And there's an argument you could make about Quentin Quire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel pretty strongly that Quentin Quire should not be cisgender.
Correct. I agree completely.
I agree. I think Quentin is
for
they,
a number
them,
of reasons,
or something.
primary among which is that has evolved beyond humanity in some very literal ways.
And also,
Right.
also primarily because, as I alluded to, I looked like Quentin Quire in the first issue. I looked like pre-haircut Quentin Quire. So it only makes sense that Quentin Quire at this point should look and dress and act like me.
Yeah, you were the model, so there you go. Yeah,
No, I mean, I think my take is that Quentin Quire should look and dress and act pretty much as Quentin Quire does, but should in his or in this context their role as provocateur and as rejecter of human dogmas be like, gender is bullshit.
Oh, Jay,
gender is
you're
a human thing.
You're completely
Yeah.
right. I did not.
Gender isn't even a human thing. Gender is a thing that humans make up and attempt.
Well, that's what I meant. Yeah, like
Yeah.
gender is this thing that was invented by some dumb humans. Why are we still using it? You know?
Yeah, like Quentin Quire is like Josie, what you described in terms of presentation and in terms of your appearance feels really deeply in line with Quentin as he's appeared lately in comics. Like
good.
I remember at one point early in transition basically realizing that I wasn't going to get read as male. I didn't have access to HRT until I'd been transitioning for several years. And so I would shoot for as confrontationally confusing as possible instead.
I know the feel.
And like that feels very in line with Quentin as he appears later in Wolverine and the X-Men and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I know that feeling. There may come a time when I wanna, I don't know, be more passy, but right now I like the idea that I can say women are whatever women are, and they don't have to be, you don't have to accept the existing paradigm.
Right.
I do need to say, I was kidding when I said that I think Quentin should look and act exactly like me. That was a joke.
Well, I think this is also me being slightly possessive about Quentin, because the extent to which my fashion sense aligns with Quentin Quire's is a little bit horrifying.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I'm way too normie for what I think Quentin should become. I think I say as someone with blue hair, but I'm way too normie for what Quentin should become. I like Quentin as just being like, all of this gender is bullshit. All of these rules about what I get to wear and what I get to, what I get to do in life are bullshit. And again, I think that absolutely would suggest a non-binary Quentin Quire.
Quentin's gender is big stompy boots.
Or an agender Quentin Quire, or any of those things.
Mm-hmm. An aggressively genderqueer Quentin Quire.
Yeah, I was just doing a bit, because it is true that I did.
No, I kind of figured that in context.
It is true that I did look like the first issue Quentin Quire, 134 Quentin Quire for a long time. Oh, see, you went all out, Jay. You did a much better cosplay than I did. I didn't cut my hair.
Oh, I'm looking at some photos here. These photos are
I
bitchin'.
Didn't cut my hair, and my hair was, so this was after I'd been at several conventions and been asked, are you cosplaying Quentin Quire?
Okay, so you just had,
to which the answer was not deliberately.
Oh, and I love that you did the psychic gun too.
Yeah. It was one of those, I can make this costume entirely out of my closet, I've got to do something impressive.
You did do something impressive. It's look, cosplay is,
I did the psychic shotgun.
Yeah, cosplay is important for anybody's gender journey, and sometimes you just need a fake firearm to complete the gender.
Mm-hmm. It's true, but not at FlameCon. You're not allowed to bring
not
those
at FlameCon. That's
nope.
right. You can't do those at FlameCon. That's right. So, what do we make of the non-Quentin Quire elements of this? We've talked a lot about Quentin, but I'd love to talk a little bit about maybe the Scott and Jean and Emma love triangle. We've talked about Scott in reference to Quentin, but what do we think of the love stuff that's happening here?
I mean, I don't think it is love stuff at this point.
No,
it's not.
This
is the Cyclops has managed infidelity by passivity.
Correct. he's
Like Emma's just been like, let's go, and he's just been like,
because that's
this is awkward.
what Cyclops. Yeah, he.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I don't want to talk about Cyclops to you because if anyone knows more about Cyclops than me,
No,
it's
but I want to
you.
see you two dialogue about it. But yeah, yeah.
But I feel like so much of this arc has been Cyclops sort of realizing and finally sort of coming like realizing and I say coming to terms with, but that doesn't necessarily change his behavior at all, but with how much he just wants someone in his life to tell him what to do. And we've talked about how
Yeah.
appropriate it is that Emma is a dominatrix, like that he just needs someone to boss him around.
Right, but he
And
needs someone who cares about him to boss him around. That's the thing, is like he's been bossed around by people who are sort of, father figures or whatever. He wants the dominatrix position is what he needs in his life.
Yeah, he wants someone else to be field leader off the field.
and
Off the
we
field. And so, but specifically he wants to be able to like let his hair down and sort of, such as it
Hmm.
is, and like be something. He doesn't know what, like he wants to be himself, but he doesn't know who himself is, and he's trying to find a safe space for that.
He and Wolverine are going to have an extremely explicit on the page conversation about that at the beginning of the next arc that
That's correct.
I think does a good job summing it up. I think also
two arcs,
that
but yes.
two arcs. Oh, Assault on Weapon Plus isn't the next one?
So it says coming next, Assault on Weapon Plus at the end of this issue, but
And it's full of lies.
Murder at the Mansion
Murder
is first.
Mansion is next. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's
So two arcs. Yeah. So he and Wolverine will eventually have an awesome conversation about it, and it'll be cool and useful. And Wolverine, I appreciate that Morrison's Wolverine recognizes that he doesn't have a leg to stand on ethically in this situation. But I mean, I think also Cyclops is coming fresh out of being possessed by Apocalypse,
Yes.
and
which he won't
having
he
this-
won't shut up
He won't
about
shut
for this
up
arc.
about, yeah.
He blames everything on being possessed by Apocalypse. But anyway,
well, because he has had no context to process that. Because the only person he knows who's had a remotely comparable experience is Jean, for whom it's both very far in the past and at this point primarily a positive thing.
Right.
And
Jean's
who-
having the manic phase of the manic depressive Phoenix. Yeah, so she's seeing it as a positive.
Jean's the one who literally says, we've all been possessed before. The bad feeling goes away.
Right. Right.
And like Scott is looking for permission to just be kind of fucked up in a corner for a while. And Emma is the only person who seems willing to grant it.
and I,
Right,
I
and
definitely I definitely talked a little bit. I can't remember if this was in our Some Angels Falling episode or in our Assault on Weapon Plus, but there's something about being perfect that like being perfect and having an anxiety disorder. And definitely it's something that goes along with obsessive compulsive disorder. And I mean real obsessive compulsive disorder, not I like to make sure that my room is neat, obsessive compulsive disorder. This idea that something's going to go wrong anyway, you're going to inevitably fuck up the relationship or fuck up this thing in your life. So you might as well just do it. You might like it's gonna go wrong anyway. So there is this sense of like, I'm gonna let Jean down. So let's just get it over with.
I'm going to do it in the most spectacular way.
Let's just get it over with and let Jean down now.
Oh, come on, it could be so much more spectacular. That's the thing, is that it's not spectacular.
It's not spectacular. You're right. I said that and I realized I was wrong.
And that it's not spectacular seems very, very in character. There's also
But you get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying, though, about like I just
Yes.
need to. If I'm gonna let her down eventually, I'm just gonna like
It's just going to happen, so fine.
well, I think there's also the factor of being the person who makes the hard calls. Like whose function is to make difficult decisions and enact them. And having fallen into that role at various points in my life, like those are the eras where I stopped being able to figure out what to eat for dinner.
Oh, yeah.
Like those are the eras where there are scant photos, but if they are, I'm always dressed the same. And the need for just to not have to make decisions, even though to quote the great philosopher's Rush, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice.
That's right.
Because Scott never really makes a conscious decision to cheat with Emma. He just sort of doesn't resist it. Like
yeah.
he's just seems so relieved that A, someone else is making difficult calls, even if they're wrong difficult calls in this case, and B, someone else is also doing the vilifiable stuff, like that he is not alone in doing the things that makes everyone go, what the hell?
Yes. A point so good, I didn't have anything to add to it. Sorry.
No, you're right. Jay's right.
You're right. You're objectively
And
right.
someday that'll be on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
After we make our Jean Grey was right and Zorn was right.
Zorn was right. I know. We're going to have a whole line of blank was right.
Zorn really was right.
Zorn was right. I mean, that's the whole point of Planet X, right?
We were planning on a Jean Grey was right one, but then the more we learn about, like, the idea of Zorn, the more it's like, you know what? Screw Magneto. Zorn was right.
We'll get into that. I don't want to spoil our Zorn was right conversation.
No, we're not going to spoil that into. I was curious, unless we have more to say about the Scott love triangle, the U-Men do pop up briefly in this. And because we have Jay, I'm curious what Jay makes of the U-Men as a concept.
Oh, great question.
Jay, how do you feel about the U-Men?
I think the U-Men are, to an extent, an attempt to introduce a Hydra equivalent to the X-Men. They are the villains. They are the faceless villains you don't have to feel bad about killing. Like, they're so unambiguously wrong and awful, and they're so...
But also kind of pathetic.
And also kind of pathetic, which, again, sort of fits the how Nazis show up in things.
Right.
I'm equating Hydra with Nazis here because I think any attempt to disequate them is weird and fucked up.
Yeah, I know. You're getting no arguments here.
Like,
no, we are with you.
Okay.
But yes.
The question that we have, and the question that we've been we did a little bit of grappling with, is, are the U-Men transphobic?
Like, is it a transphobic metaphor?
Is the metaphor itself transphobic?
And the only reason I bring it up is because I remember hanging out with comic shop guys back when I was an aspiring comic shop guy as a youth. And they would refer, when we would talk about Morrison's run as it was coming out, the comic guys would refer to the U-Men as the T-slur X-Men, or these T-slur mutants. Like, the idea that was getting picked up, I don't know if it was what was being put down, was this is like those freaks who cut up their bodies so they can be a different sex.
This is very much with a window of 2025, but for me, I feel like the U-Men are the equivalents of people who pop up on Twitter or Blue Sky when someone says something mean about Elon Musk.
Yes. Like,
they're much, much more, like, their vibe is much more weirdo tech bro.
We've absolutely talked about them as
yes.
AI supporters.
Oh, yeah.
Right, because the idea is they just steal things from other people and then say, I'm just as good as you for that thing that I stole from you.
Well, or I'm better because I've stolen this and added it to myself without changing in any way. I think actually they're a good counterbalance to Quentin's arc in this.
Go on. I'm very curious
because
about
they are all about they are all about this very superficial performance of transhumanism.
Yes.
That is all about just literal theft and grafting, and in no way ascendant.
Yes. It's not about transcending limitations so much as just, I want laser beams and I deserve laser beams.
I want to be able to do the cool stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I've come to really find that I was most nervous going into this podcast talking about the U-Men would be uncomfortable for me or for the listeners or for whatever. And I think they've actually, I'm actually kind of mad they haven't been used more subsequently, because I've come to find them very
they're attached to John Sublime.
Yeah, the Sublime thing is...
And now I know how complicated Sublime is.
And when you use John Sublime in a story... You have to, you should at least to some extent reckon with the entirety of what's going on with John Sublime. And nobody wants to do that for very, very, very good reasons, and that he is an absolute continuity black hole.
Yes, it does. It changed. Yeah.
Josie explained this to me the other day, or tentatively explained this to me, because this was not a fact I was aware of. And then when Dr. Sublime shows up, I'm like, wait, was there a mistake?
Is this the same? I'm like, no,
and
it's all
Josie
sentient.
like,
it's a sentient mold that wants to do something.
John,
Jay, you have a better understanding.
You said, the U-Men briefly show up. John Sublime has briefly mentioned this. John Sublime is actually all over this arc because he is the drug kick.
That's right, because he's the drug kick.
Right.
And
oh my God,
and
I
by the
forgot
end,
that.
he's the beast, and Here Comes Tomorrow, to
Yeah.
spoiler everything. But yeah, it's like Morrison tries to, by the end, sort of be like, and guess what was actually making the whole plot happen? This character that I never really developed much of.
I mean, I think
know?
John Sublime is just an extreme thread of Morrison weird. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know that he is necessarily a fascinating. I don't think that he's necessarily a metaphor for anything so much as a wouldn't it be cool if.
Oh, 100%.
100%, but I think the U-Men, if you brought back the U-Men, you could do interesting stuff with
Yeah.
them, even independent of Sublime. Like the
Especially
idea
independent
of,
of Sublime.
yeah, if you brought them back now as like a metaphor for the idea that like certain people just deserve to have all of the abilities of every artist and creative, then I think you could have something very rich and angry.
I think the U-Men should have gone after humans too. I think that would have made them a lot more interesting.
That, yes, yes. One of the most interesting things that happens with the U-Men is in Planet X when one of the U-Men gets ripped apart by other mutants when he's trying to be like, yeah, I'm a mutant too, go Magneto. And they're like, there's a human. And they rip, it's just like, I
Yeah.
don't know. It's interesting. But yeah, what else should we talk about for
So
this?
while we're talking about the human, let's just address briefly, because I do love Zorn and Zorn's special class.
Yes.
Yes.
One thing that I really appreciate about Zorn and Zorn's special class, and this whole arc I mean, honestly, all of the Morrison run, but especially this arc, is shifting the focus down to a sort of smaller, not superhero scale.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said that so many times on this podcast with regards to like the characters being people first and their powers coming second, and how that's why I hate the Five and all of those things. But what I love about this is like, yeah, there would be there would be mutants whose powers suck. There
Yes.
would be mutants
Yes.
who are ugly and terrible and don't, may have some kind of, like they're neuroatypical. I feel like Ernst and Basilisk are certainly coded as such.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You
You
get a
know,
lot of yeah, it takes all kinds.
And you really have this from the beginning of the Morrison run because you get Ugly John in the beginning.
I was just about to say we talk about Ugly John all the time, Jay. But it's and even just like the fact that this isn't like Quentin even says like this isn't even a story about supervillains.
Mm-hmm.
This is a story about different people and different people approaching tasks differently. And I love, obviously it's different with Zorn's special class, but it is this same kind of idea where it's like, you know what? It isn't always about superheroes fighting super villains.
Mm-hmm.
And, and like Ernst is never really going to fight a supervillain unless you consider that she is Cassandra Nova, which I
Well,
believe.
eventually, but yeah.
Ernst totally helped fight Sauron.
I know. Well, I was about to say, I do genuinely, not a joke, think that one of the other best appearances of this special class concept is in Spider-Man and the X-Men, which I feel like is often just treated as that one meme panel of Sauron, but I genuinely think is a good time and a great character study of a lot of these, like, not great X-Men kids.
These misfit toys, the misfit toys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
So I truly can't recommend that run enough. You've seen the meme panel. I know Sauron doesn't want to cure cancer, but honestly, the rest of it is really good. And if you enjoy the Zorn stuff in that, I think there's a lot to enjoy in that book.
There's a panel that I have saved that I'm digging for right now because the search function on my computer is highly broken.
Welcome to 2025.
It's also just awful that it was a little confusing, and I just need to shout this out. I have no analysis about this, but Basilisk's recurring joke about No Girl just becomes a little confusing because No Girl later becomes Martha's code name.
Yeah.
Oh, that is confusing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's deeply confusing.
Yeah, there's just nothing else to say. Like, I have no analysis there.
I really want while we're waiting for the screenshot, I want to shout out.
I'm having trouble finding it, but it's saying something along the lines of "I love knocking down walls."
Yes,
there you go. I love the use. We were talking about the outfits.
It's Ernst and Eyeboy.
Oh, that's right. Eyeboy was in that arc too.
Okay, share the file.
I love Spider-Man and the X-Men so
Yes.
much.
Okay, the iBoy saying, before today, I never knew how much fun it was busting down walls. And then Ernst says, isn't it the best? I love it.
The other great thing about Spider-Man and the X-Men is that the entire plot operates around one pun that Elliot Kalin was waiting 4 issues to write down. And the entire plot is about that one pun that he was waiting 4 issues to write down.
Hey, the long game is what it's all about.
Yeah.
You know, you got to commit to the bit.
Which I'm not going to spoil that pun on the air
No,
because it's
Lord,
become
no, we would never do
increasingly
that.
clear to me that a lot of people have not read this comic.
I want to go back to the special class.
Yes, please.
And to what you said
Please.
about it's not fighting supervillains, because that statement takes on an interesting new meaning when you read this knowing that Magneto is Zorn.
Yeah, and I was about to say Zorn Watch. So we've been recording these out of order, and in earlier episodes, I kept positing that Zorn and Magneto had not yet switched places. And then
I kept saying they were the same guy.
And then we did Planet X, and in Planet X, we've already recorded our Planet X episode, folks, but I am very contrite about the fact that I was wrong and Zorn was always Magneto. But once
it makes no sense.
It makes very little sense, and I'm sure Jay can explain to us how it makes sense that Zorn was a man who had a delusion about being Magneto.
No, don't put that on Jay.
No, it doesn't. Zorn doesn't make sense.
I don't want you to explain it, is what I was about to say.
Yeah.
But what I will say, Zorn Watch, once again, we see Zorn not use healing powers. Once again, they call him in to heal Quentin, and he's like, look, I can't help Quentin. And like, we never see, we very rarely, he heals a bird once.
A bird, that's right.
But like, we almost never, when he heals them of their flu in Imperial,
that makes sense.
Breaking robots, which is something Magneto can do.
Yeah, that's easy. That's what he does all the time.
Now, one thing that I am really curious about this, and Jay, I know not to interrupt, you had stuff you wanted to talk about, but I'm curious your take, because Magneto, while I'm doing what the X-Men do to him in Planet X. In Planet X, he's like, Charles, wasn't it so obvious? A man with a star for a brain trapped in an iron prison, shouldn't it have been obvious that it was me? Is that a Holocaust metaphor?
I guess.
Maybe?
Because I'm starting to think, after reading this, I'm starting to think it maybe is. Because, I was texting Josie earlier, and to slightly paraphrase, he's like a little star caged in an iron dungeon that never lost the freedom to dream. And I'm like, is that supposed to be a Holocaust
like
thing?
a concentration camp thing? Yeah.
Or is it supposed to be Magneto just self-aggrandizing?
I'm such a star.
Yeah, maybe he's a star.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, we learned that he is championship level tango dancer.
Yes, that is my favorite thing to come out of this arc.
Yes, canonical, folks.
Yes.
And I bet he and Charles have
let Magneto tango.
I bet he and Charles have tangoed together.
Oh, unquestionably.
Oh, 100%. I wonder who leads, but yes.
Magneto, because he's the one who actually knows what he's doing.
That's right.
Yeah, Charles didn't say he was a championship level tango dancer.
That's right.
But Jay, you were saying that you had some things you wanted to talk about with the Zorn Magneto knowledge, the Zorn Magneto hindsight.
Please, yes.
Right, because you've got simultaneously Quentin doing his I'm Big Bag and Scary arc. And in the background, you have Zorn very, very quietly empowering the special class, but in a way that very much feels in retrospect like grooming them to be supervillains.
Right.
Because the thing they use teamwork to do, the thing that he sets up for them to like come into their own doing is literally killing someone. It's killing someone who
has done something.
Killing is the appropriate response to, but it's still like it still lets use teamwork and empathy and to kill a guy.
And the special class does become his new brotherhood.
Yeah.
His new brotherhood is Toad plus the special class plus Esme.
Yeah.
But it is, and you know what else is really interesting too, and it is this sort of like, this thing that I find so interesting where, we were joking earlier, like Zorn is right, and we kind of said that in we'll talk about that more in the Planet X episode. Again, I'm
Mhm.
sorry we're recording these out of order, but that's life.
It was all about guest availability, folks. But
Yeah,
yes, go on.
and we knew we needed Jay on this one.
Yes.
But like Zorn, Magneto is grooming them to be the new Brotherhood.
Mhm.
But Magneto as Zorn winds up being so many of Magneto's best traits
Yes.
that this is the closest he becomes to being Claremont Magneto, who just wants to help the children,
Yeah.
which is such a recurring theme. Like, this is, Magneto at his most good, and I don't mean like good like as a narrative like well written. I mean good as in like virtuous, is when he's the New Mutants headmaster. And he's
Yeah.
Yeah.
basically being the New Mutants headmaster here, but he's at war with himself, where he's simultaneously doing a good thing for these kids. He's like, Beak learned confidence, Ernst learned to care for someone other than herself, all of these things. But he's also trying to create a new brotherhood at the same time. And it is
Yeah.
this real war almost in Magneto's head between this Zorn persona that he's created and this terrorist Magneto persona that, as we'll discuss in the Planet X thing, he's also created, because they're all just creations. The self is a creation, and Magneto has created
Magneto, especially so. He's created so many names and identities.
Which again takes us back to Quentin and the performance of Revolution.
Correct.
Mhm.
I think there's a critical difference between Magneto as Zorn and Magneto as Michael Xavier. And I think that difference is basically Xavier's presence. Absent Charles Xavier, what we've seen again and again, we've seen in that arc, we've seen in the Age of Apocalypse, Magneto feels obliged to fill those shoes.
Yes. If Charles is gone,
Yeah.
he feels like he has to become Charles.
Yeah. Or at least that he has to try to do the things that were most important to Charles. He doesn't have to become Charles, because he does them very much his own way.
Correct.
But
Correct.
he sees Charles as an essential component. And this one, Charles is here, and Charles is running the school, and Charles is walking, and Charles is, not being possessed at the moment, but
is public.
and that gives, and it's also a reversal of their usual positions, which is usually Charles closeted and Magneto public.
Right. Very interesting.
And I don't know that this is deliberate. I don't know that I'm not just like making my red string serial killer map here in my head. But I think I'm much less likely to ascribe those good intentions to Zorn because he's got Charles there to push back against.
That is fair, but I feel like Zorn winds up being good by accident almost. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
Magneto as Zorn, I don't think is a conscious decision to be good. I think Magneto as Zorn can't help but be a better man.
Well, and we see in the arc where he goes villain, like the special class is really, really taken aback by the fact that he's now mean to them.
Right.
Yeah, Ernst especially.
Yeah.
Ernst keeps saying, "Where's Zorn?" And Bassus keeps trying to say there is no Zorn. And then Ernst says, "Yeah, but when's Zorn coming back?" And
then even Wolverine and Cyclops run in and are like, "Come on, Zorn, do the right thing." And Magneto's like, "I'm not, there is no Zorn." And Cyclops is still like, "Zorn, help us." Because
and
again,
Magneto talks to Zorn. Zorn
they
starts
all
like
they all believe in Zorn. I think there's something
Right.
there's something innate about when Magneto puts on the Zorn helmet and pretends to be a Buddhist pacifist.
Yeah.
He can't help. Like, it's not like, you're right, he wouldn't consciously be good when Charles Xavier is around, but I think there is something like he can't help but give into the Zornness of it.
Well, it's also the sort of the inverse of when you're in a position of power, performance of fascism is still fascism. When you're in a position of power,
Right.
performance of compassion is still compassion. Whereas it's functionally,
does it matter? Like,
indistinguishable.
even if you were doing it for nefarious purposes, these kids felt welcomed and gained self-confidence.
Yeah, it's one of those, I don't give a shit if you support trans rights for cynical economic reasons. You're supporting trans rights.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I always had I like rainbow capitalism type thing. I miss rainbow capitalism. But
I
anyway.
miss the popular perception by the largest economic engines that we were a population to be courted.
Correct.
I think that was
Yes.
reflective of a very specific social state that included progress.
Correct.
I mean,
Not
I
just
don't.
courted, but also like not just us as a market, but that we were cool.
Yeah.
And that people who weren't like us would see us as cool, which is a big part of this Morrison run.
Well, I'm raising my hand because that's a big part, especially it is mentioned in this. And let's get
Yeah.
into it with some of the Jumbo Carnation stuff and some of the revenge on Jumbo Carnation stuff, because literally when Quentin lures the folks who, is it the folks who beat up
Yeah.
Jumbo? Yeah.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
Quentin lures them into an alley, one of them specifically notes, right, or there's a conversation.
He doesn't like mutants, but they have cool bands.
He doesn't like
Right.
mutants, but they have cool bands. And
Yep.
and that we talked about that in our Germ-Free Generation episode, Josie. But
Yes.
that being such a relatable thing with so many
Oh, yeah.
with so many minority
Mhm.
groups, that like black people, again, are so often, like, obviously, like, anti-black racism is so real in America,
Mhm.
but black music is super popular.
Right.
We live in a world, and I always say, like, Chappell Roan was the #1 artist of 2024, and Donald Trump won the election.
Right.
Again, like, both can be true, because there is this society loves what we create more than society loves who we are.
There's a terrific bit on that in Why I Hate Saturn by Kyle Baker.
Oh, say more.
That's specifically about someone who is hired, about basically the racial politics of someone being hired to write a column on black culture for an entertainment magazine, and the fact that they specifically wanted an outside perspective, but they hired a black man to write this column, but he wasn't someone whom they thought of as actually black because of how he came across socially.
Right.
And
Right.
it's the kind of thing that would be real fucked up to read from a white creator, and that from Baker makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
But it's I think that's absolutely the role that Morrison has mutant culture coming into. That it's cool, the cool stuff and the innovative stuff comes from the margins and gets adopted and diluted by the center.
Also, shout out to Kyle Baker. Around this same time, a more perfect comic was coming out, Truth, Red, White, and Black, which was very much about cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
And about, in addition to being about the literal experimentation that has happened on black people by the US government, it was a metaphor for the fact that there are so many elements of culture that comics have taken from black culture without ever really giving black creators much of a place of spotlight, certainly not letting black people run the places.
Yeah.
And that's coming out around the same time as all of this. This is something that's in the air. And unfortunately, the revolution has not yet fully happened. But people were talking about it.
Marvel in the early aughts was
ballsy.
It was ballsy. I was thinking, like,
They took some big swings.
the X-Men are this and Chuck Austin, and then like
And Ultimate X-Men.
and
which is
Ultimate
even more
X-Men
popular.
and Extreme X-Men.
Right.
And
Claremont
New Mutants Volume 2
Right,
starts around
and
this
it's
point.
such
Shout out to
And NYX.
and shout out to
NYX,
Kieran
yeah.
shout out to Kieran Grant, artist on the first one of this, and first artist of New Mutants Volume 2. But anyway,
But it's interesting, and they're experimenting with it, and it reminds me of bits of time in the mid-90s when books in the line had really, really different flavors, and really, like, there were titles that had space to do that. And this is one of those rare occurrences where the really, really far out one is the flagship book.
Yes.
well, and we've also mentioned that what happens is the really, really far out one is the flagship book, and then the next run, Astonishing X-Men, is never mind all that then, like the end of Gravity Falls,
Right.
when the mayor hangs up that sign. Like, hold on. And
Yeah.
and that's
I'm
again,
thinking more Simpsons and the judge decreeing that the Armin Tamzarian incident shall be forgotten and no one shall ever mention it again, and everyone agreeing.
it's basically the same joke in Gravity Falls.
I
It's just
know, I know. And it's like
a very
that's what happened.
Simpsons-inspired show, to be completely
Right, and
honest.
that's what happened. That's what happened is this stuff gets sort of the kibosh putting on it before it's even over.
But yeah, also going back to that culture thing, I've talked a lot about Jumbo Carnation, and I really liked Jumbo Carnation as, again, because what we see in this is, especially Slick and Tattoo, and then eventually Quentin being sort of driven to act by the death of this famous person.
Hmm.
And to me, not to say that like horrific genocide does not happen, because horrific genocide does happen. And I wish it didn't, but it does.
Yeah.
But there's something so much more just like relatable about, again, taking it to this smaller scale
Hmm.
and taking it to this smaller scale of being like, sometimes there's one person who something horrible happens to, and that
Hmm.
changes your life. And that it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be 40 million mutants died and that changed my life. It can be one pretty cool mutant died, and that's enough, and that is what
Yeah.
radicalized me.
And it doesn't have to be accurate. It just has to be the narrative around it.
Correct, which is
Right.
also important. Again, I think there's a couple of things that I've expressed my anger at Jumbo coming back, because I think it's twofold. I think Jumbo's death is more important symbolically than it is literally. Like, he's not a character, he is a plot device that motivates the characters. Also, I
Hmm.
think you're never going to be able to draw clothes as cool as the ones we're supposed to believe Jumbo Carnation
Yeah.
makes, which is, again, part of my issue with the Hellfire Gala, which I complain about every week on
Uh,
this show. But ultimately, I think it's such a smart idea. And I think, like Jay said about the characters feeling so relatable and age appropriate, like Slick just writing a bad protest song
Hmm.
about how sad he is that Jumbo Carnation died. That is so being 15.
It's the Tom Lehrer bit
Like,
about folk
yeah.
songs sucking because they're written by the people, too.
exactly.
Yeah. Yes.
But again, it doesn't need to be about these cosmic or epic scale conflicts. It's what makes this stuff matter, and what makes this arc feel so raw and feel so personal is that it is just about some guy died, some teens told a story about it, and one teen got real mad. And
Hmm.
like, that is how life goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, One thing though that I do want to say, and I know we've been going for a while, but there's so much to say in this. And Jay had the misfortune of telling us that he doesn't have another appointment until like 2 p.m., so we can just keep going forever.
I have some
Um,
stuff I have to do, so let's keep it.
Yeah, you're in a much later time zone.
I'm in a much later time zone,
what I
yes.
what I will say is one thing Jay and I were talking about before this is, Jay, you asked me like, how does this arc feel as a teacher?
Hmm.
Because I am a
Well,
teacher.
and specifically a high school teacher, someone who teaches kids this age.
Right.
I'm curious about that too.
Well, I was already telling Jay a little bit about that off mic, but now I can tell Josie and also our audience at home. First of all, this is absolutely not, I mean, like, this is absolutely playing around, again, like with Germ Free Generation, in the school shooter aesthetic. And
Yeah,
that is number one, obviously, as a teacher. That is my number one fear in life.
sure.
And I think I even said that in an episode already, that is my number one fear.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, that is captured very well here. But I think what's captured so well here is, the Cuckoos call Emma out on how Emma's like, I just want to be a teacher. I just want to help kids. And they're like, well, your kids always die. And they call her out on that. And, I'm very fortunate in that my students have not died, and certainly have
Yeah.
not died in a, Genosha incident. But like, They are capturing something that is very real and very true about this, and very real and very true of, both the general vibes of this series, the old versus new. And, again, when Quentin is like, everyone is scared of their replacements, scared of their children, scared of themselves.
I mean, that's much
We
more
as
literal for Emma with the cuckoos.
Correct, because they are literally herself. Although apparently she doesn't know that at this point,
No, she's
which,
going to learn that in one of the Phoenix miniseries.
but
Mm.
the point that I'm making is one of the things that does kind of hold true with is like, we as teachers want what's best for our students, and we want our students to grow up to be, in a way versions of ourselves, which feels like a weird thing to say, but like we hope we can impart them some values and some skills and some understanding that they can use to take,
Well, and to demonstrate just by who you are that you can be an adult who you are.
Well, and I can't speak to
right.
this as a teacher, but as a parent, you want them to grow up, take the best bits of you with them, and build something new.
Right, and we talked about
Yeah.
we talked about how parenting is similar to teaching in many regards, but ultimately you don't have control over it. And that's what
No.
Emma is realizing here, in a very literal sense, that like her students keep dying on her. But in a very, in a figurative sense, like we can't we can't we can't know what's going to happen to our students. We can do what's for the best and we can hope that they grow up big and strong and all of these things, but ultimately it is out of our hands. And it's so interesting that what we see in this arc are Emma's prize students, the cuckoos, saying, "We don't like you anymore. Like we are done with you." And we also see Xavier's prized student, because we are told, part of me wishes we'd seen it earlier. Part of me feels like we didn't even need to see it earlier. But we're told Quentin is his number one, like, favorite student.
Yeah.
And Quentin also says, "Xavier, I'm disappointed in you. You're doing the wrong thing." And it is this sense of like, we can try our best as teachers. We can try our best to impart our wisdom and all of these different things, but we never know. And our students are going to grow beyond us. And our students are going to change in ways that we don't always want, or we don't always expect, or, ways that kind of leave us behind. But again, it is this old versus new. And it is this idea that like, I never know what's going to become of my replacement.
The other thing about
Yeah.
Quentin and Xavier is that Quentin is to a fair extent right.
Yeah.
He is right for the wrong reasons, and he's right in ways that are absolutely unconscionable. Like he acts on that rightness in ways that are unconscionable and inappropriate, but he's absolutely right about Xavier.
Oh, yeah. The dream hasn't worked, or at least it hasn't been lived up to.
Yeah. And he's right that this is the generation of kids, the generation that should be calling them out, that it is their responsibility as the new up and coming kids to challenge that.
Mm-hmm. I was Quentin's age when I read this. I'm only realizing that right now. It's kind of funny.
You
I
know,
don't know why I
speaking
didn't do that math.
Speaking of age, just a quick call out, but I want to note that there's a huge typo in this book, because Emma says that she's 27 years old, but
Yeah.
that's impossible because Emma is older than I.
For so many reasons.
Emma has no,
Yes.
but I just literally mean like, I refuse to believe that Emma is younger than I am. I refuse to accept that fact
Oh,
of
you're
my
having
life.
the
Uh,
you're
I'm
having the Frank Miller with Batman problem,
Yeah,
where he's
or
like, I
or
can't be older than Batman, so I have to make Batman older.
when David Willis has a great comic in Short Pact, their older series, where Ethan realizes that he's older than April O'Neil and has like an entire crisis
Mm.
about it. So no, I refuse to be older than Emma Frost. Emma Frost is always going to be 3 years older than me. I've decided that is how old Emma Frost is.
I'm down. That works for
yeah,
me.
I do not buy 27-year-old Emma. Like, that's.
Well,
I
I
buy
do.
that 27 is the age that Emma lies about being.
Well, I was about to say, you can argue that she's lying about her age because she wants to seem young, because we know everything about Emma is constructed. We've
Yes.
talked about how Emma is vaguely, almost like there's some element of transness to
Yeah.
Emma as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely.
We've talked about that in another episode, and with the Emma prequel series and stuff. But any other points that we really felt we had to address? Oh, you know what we have to address? Josie, I'm sorry. I know you want to leave, but if anyone has to
No, go
address
ahead.
this, it's you.
Tell me.
This is where we get the sort of payoff to Beast coming out as gay, which is
Oh, I
one
was
of
wondering if we were going to talk about that.
we
Yeah.
can't not
Yeah.
talk about it. We made
No,
such
no,
a
no, no, no. I was wondering if we were going to get to that because if not, we could get to it at the very end when you have all the Beast wrap up stuff. But no, the scene where Scott calls Beast out for not being gay, this infuriated me at the time because the scene in the previous arc where Beast does come out as gay, even though I was just a quote unquote ally, I found that to be a wonderful scene. I
You
thought it
were
was
a great
beautiful.
ally. You were a great
Oh,
ally.
See,
thank
I
you.
read that when it first came out as absolute pretense, as Beast doing that to fuck with Trish Tilby.
I think I had enough queer longing that I wanted to believe it was a genuine coming out.
I was just gonna say, Jay, were you queer when you read
Yeah,
this? Or like were you identifying as
yeah.
queer? Okay, yeah.
I wasn't. I was very much identified as
we
straight.
were both closeted completely
Yeah,
when
I
we
was
read
very
this.
closeted, so I read that scene. I was like, oh, in a moment of crisis, he realizes this thing about himself. And then they walk it back. But I would contend this goes with my estrogen could save Grant Morrison's conception of Henry McCoy thesis because this conversation sounds like so many conversations. You know what it sounds like? The conversation I had with my mom when I came out as a bisexual man because she was like, you can't be gay. You've had so many girlfriends. And I was like, yeah, I said I'm bisexual. And she's like, but so does that mean you have to have like Scott is so not wrapping his mind around the totality of what could be the truth here, which is, yeah, maybe he's not gay insofar as he likes men, Beast, but Beast might be queer insofar as Beast likes women. And as Beast says, come on, I'm as gay as the next mutant. I make a great role model for alienated young men and women. Why not?
Which to me, and we talked about how much I hate the mutant metaphor in our second
Right.
episode on E is for Extinction. But to me, that almost feels like Grant Morrison explicitly making fun of the mutant metaphor by being like, well, I'm
Oh, it
not. Well,
totally is.
yeah, well, Beast being
Yeah.
like, I'm not gay, but I'm a great role model, so I might as well be gay. And
I
like,
choose to have a headcanon that Beast is like walking back. This is entirely headcanon. I am not saying that Morrison intended this. But I think in the moment when Beast comes out to Trish, it is a sincere expression of something that is true, which is Beast is not cishet. Beast is something else. Beast is not just what he's been trying to be. And then here, he's trying to walk it back, much in the way that people who come out a little bit and then get terrified step back into the closet. But I kind of like my thesis. I like the idea that Beast is going through changes that he can't necessarily articulate well at any given moment, but he likes them. He likes that he's becoming something new and different.
I do think some of that is you projecting on Beast.
Oh, I would say about 90% of that is me projecting on Beast,
So
but this is what comic books are for.
going back to projection, I mentioned that
Yeah.
I was out as queer in high school and college, and to me, what Beast did very very much read as the experience, the frequent experience of women who would never have dated me and wanted to ostentatiously kiss me in front of their boyfriends,
Oh, wow. Very different context. Yeah.
or like to establish some kind of countercultural. Okay.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that's a perfectly
It's
valid
interesting,
reading of it.
like how cut and dried it read to all of us in such different interpretations. It reminds me of sort of the different reactions to Iceman coming out.
Oh, well, that's a whole separate thing.
Yeah, but that there were
Oh,
people who was like, this reflects no queer experience, and people who were like, this reflects every queer experience, and people, and just like
yes.
the whole
Yes.
thing.
And it's also echoed in that in both cases there's the strong stench of corporate going, we can't let this go too far. Like we don't want to get too gay with it, you know? I don't know. I just remember when Iceman came out, that was around the time they were really going hard on Hercules being straight. Like, it was the exact same time. And I just never, I don't know. I never trust Marvel to follow through on that stuff.
Was that when he was fucking Snowbird?
I can't remember, but literally, Iceman came out as gay. They made a big deal out of it.
As the
And then
person who's read all of Alpha Flight, I need to know these things.
and then like a few weeks later, or a few months later, it was very close in time, they were going to launch a new Hercules book. And there was this big push
to make the
online.
subtitle Hercules, heterosexual.
Well, no, there was a big push online to be like, well, Hercules is obviously bi because there was that AU where he's hooked up with Wolverine, but more importantly, he's Hercules, the mythic Hercules.
That would be Governor General
not...
Logan Howlett, actually.
Yeah, true.
Right, sorry,
please,
Logan Howlett.
please.
Sorry, I apologize. But the point is, then the social media manager, the publicist. The publicist for Marvel, because they were taking so many hits for it, took that scene where Iceman comes out, is told that he's gay, and they redid the dialogue bubbles to have it be Herc being told he's straight. And I was like, that's the most crass, disgusting shit I've ever seen in my life. And it came straight from Marvel Communications. They took the tweet down, but...
Also, the heterosexual Hercules is a better title. Like when he was the Incredible Hercules. No, I'm sorry, Jay. I just have to punch up your
hetero Hercules.
I feel like if Marvel's going to be shit, they should just lean into it.
Yeah, maybe.
And Jay, that's happening. They're going back in time to meet the founding fathers. If that's not Marvel If that's not Marvel leaning into the shittiness of modern Marvel, then I don't know what to tell you. A team of entirely white characters are going back in time to meet...
Wait,
I feel like if that arc is not Henry McCoy and Ben Franklin just talking about weird kink the entire time, it's pointless.
Anything else that we want to say about this?
Yeah, I was really enriched by this conversation. It was every bit what I was hoping for. And Jay, do you have any closing thoughts on Riot at Xavier's? I know we could talk if we got into the nitty gritty for a million years.
We really could. I had an awesome time revisiting this. I like this arc so much better in 2025 than I did in 2000 whatever when I first read it. I think this holds up with the additional context of the last 2 decades really well.
Yeah. Yep.
That has been the weirdest thing about reading this comic for this podcast, and like why I love that we're going so deep on Grant Morrison's run for this, because I genuinely think that this is better. Like, people are like, did it age well? And I think so much of this run is better now in 2025 than it would have been in 2001.
Yeah, this is aged like a fine wine.
There are exceptions, but yes.
And folks just heard our Dust episode last week.
Yeah, so yikes.
But, Jay, I just have one question for you, and I know you could probably talk about this for like 3 hours, but Josie has things to do.
We have a lightning round question.
Okay.
Yes.
So in Grant Morrison's like manifesto about the X-Men and like what makes the X-Men work, one thing that they say is crucial to the X-Men's success is that Wolverine is hot. So my question for you, Jay, is Logan. James Logan Howlett, hot or not?
Hot, but weird hot.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
I'm going to go ahead and say he is the kind of hot that doesn't come across in photos, but is really intense in person.
Oh, perfect answer.
I knew that he'd have a great answer to that question.
Yeah, Jay, we knew we could depend on you.
I try.
Okay, well, I guess that wraps it up. Jay, where can people find you if you want to be found?
Well, if you want to hear me specifically talking more about the X-Men, you can look me up at explainthexmen.com. It's Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men. It's a weekly podcast all about the ins, outs, retcons, clones, time travel of comics' greatest superhero soap opera. I've obviously done this patter a lot. We are coming up on our I think we will our 500th episode will be out by the time this is released, or will be coming out roughly contiguous to this.
How exciting.
It's a little weird. For context, we're approaching the Morrison run, but we're not going to be there, I think, until 2026. If you want to hear me talk about X-Men, but also other things, including a lot of prison abolition, which is my central thing that I do when I'm not talking about the X-Men, you can find me on Blue Sky, where my username is just Edidin. Edidin.
Great. Becca, where can people find you?
You can find me on Blue Sky at Tall Girl Petunia. You can find my writing about my other special interest, the works of Jim Henson, at toughpigs.com. You can find my other podcast, A Prairie Dawn Companion, which is about the Muppets and 70s feminism.
That's such a good title. Oh my God.
I
Isn't
can't,
it? I know.
Jay, our good friend Michal Richardson actually is the one who came up with that title. So,
I am not entirely surprised
Oh.
by that, having shared a writer's room with Mahal for about a year.
yeah. So it is worth noting that, but that podcast can be found on the Muppet Fan Podcasts with toughpigs.com feed. It's on a feed with some other stuff, so look for it there. Josie, where can people find you?
They can find me by following a very special string of characters, and those characters are JOSIE.ZONE, Josie.zone. You go to Instagram, Blue Sky, the URL bar of your browser, and you will find me with Josie.zone. Just keep looking for Josie.zone. And next week, what are we talking about?
Well, that's so great that you asked, because next week we're answering the question of who done it, but more importantly, why do we care? As we do issues 139 through 141, Murder at the Mansion.
Yeah, don't be deceived by the last issue, as we said, of Riot Xavier's, where it promises Assault on Weapon Plus. That's not what happens next.
No, that is not what happens next. What happens next is Murder at the Mansion. What happens next is Josie and I get kind of bored.
But no, you should still listen because our
Yes!
guest is great. Our
We
guest
have
is
an
terrific.
incredible guest. It's Hugh Jackman. It's not.
not
It's
Hugh
not
Jackman.
Hugh Jackman. But we do have an incredible guest for that one.
Because I absolutely believed you.
Well, that's what I say. The best part about that running gag is we only have guests on once. So Becca gets to goose people with that every single time.
None of our, like, only one of our episodes has released at the point that Jay is recording this. And I know Jay hasn't listened to it. And I don't think I make that joke in that episode because we don't have a guest. Every time I tell our guest that our next guest is Hugh Jackman. And every time they do a double take.
They buy it for about a nanosecond. Anyway, okay, so we'll be talking about Murder at the Mansion. Until then, everybody remember, burn away what doesn't work. Thanks.